The next generation of recruits.
To the next generation of recruits.
You've decided to dedicate your life to the service of this nation. Having served for 23 years of my life, I'm extremely proud of you.
But the sad truth is, you're more likely to be sexually assaulted by a fellow service member than be shot by an enemy at war.
My assault occurred.
2 sexual assaults.
Thousands of service members report being sexually assaulted each year, but only a fraction of those cases end in a conviction.
The problem is, almost all the authority lies in the hands of commanders.
It's like you have to tell your boss that you were a colleague, and then they have the power to decide whether to dole out justice.
This needs to change. It's time for sexual assault cases
To be handled by specialized, independent military prosecutors
Outside the chain of command.
outside the chain of command.
outside the chain of command. I joined the military because I was growing up in a really poor neighborhood and I wanted to give my son a better life. I was in my barracks room. A sergeant came up to my door. He pushed his way into the room and I went up to my team leader, I went up to my squad leader, I tried to talk to my platoon sergeant about it. I went up my chain of command and I was shut down at every turn. They have no loyalty to me. I had just gotten there. They were never gonna take my side. I had finally gotten approved to move out of the barracks room. I was getting ready to live with my son. A officer showed up at my front door and he threw me on. I was bleeding. Once he finished, he made sure to let me know that he was an officer. He showed up at my front door and he threw me on my bed and violently. This assault left me with cuts, it left me with bruises. I was bleeding. Once he finished, he made sure to let me know that he was an officer and that even if I did report it, I'd be wasting my time. All we can do is tell our chain of command, which is essentially our boss, and hope that he either believes us or he cares enough about us as a person.
It's the same with the invisible wound. Mine is on the inside. Originally, I wanted to join the Army. Marine Corps recruiter showed up and I was 17 and he did the, what, you think you can't join the Marine Corps? And I was like, watch me. It was probably the toughest thing that I'd ever achieved. Nothing came close to that pride. I got to Okinawa in 1999. I went in a skirt and a pink tank top, and I was very proud to know that I was a strong woman. I was a Marine, and to still be feminine and feel comfortable in that. I was blindsided. I dealt with sexual harassment. I was one woman to every 60 men, and I had gone out one night, and I didn't. I kind of kept to myself a bit, and I went out, and that night I was drugged and I was raped by my sergeant, who was my chain of command, meaning he was the person that if something happened to me, I have to go to report, and I reported it, and the more that I pushed for things to be done and for them to investigate it, the more repercussions came to me, professionally, personally. I was kind of blacklisted. Very shortly after I was raped, I was separated with an other than honorable discharge. I didn't come home to this big, welcome home, Marine. It was, you're no longer a Marine. I lost all my veteran benefits. I was not eligible to go to the VA and receive mental health care. I had such severe PTSD. 13 years went by, and this was eating me up. It took over my life. And I made the decision to fight.
I believe wholeheartedly that in my situation, if the process of reporting handled completely outside of the chain of command, it would have allowed me to see my rapist convicted and sentenced to justice.
Attorneys worked for 4 years on my case, and the Department of Defense this January upgraded my discharge to general under honorable conditions. And that meant that I was now eligible for VA compensation. And this strong me that people see now, I don't know that I would have been the same woman had I not gone through what I went through.
In the Navy, I really believed in what I was doing. And I still do believe in service. We loved the idea of being there for each other, struggling, pulling together, being a team. Our class leader would refer to women as split tail, hey you with the hair. He liked to call us bitches, and feminazi was attributed to me quite frequently. He would ask if our vaginas hurt. Are you a softball player, which is their euphemism for lesbian? I told my immediate chain of command above our class leader. I was ostracized. Nobody would talk to me. Members of the staff treated me like I had done something terrible. Our class leader went on to an operations class after our C school class ended, and he told everybody in that operations course, whoever was to set C with me was to make me pay. So the petty officer second class that was in charge of me, whenever we were in an airlock together, would reach down into my very private feminine regions and grope me. He would send people back to their racks, and he would attack me. He acted like I was supposed to be liking this too, which further confused me as to what exactly am I supposed to do with this? How exactly am I supposed to approach this? I have already reported sexual harassment once, and there's a myth out there that you have one get out of jail free card, and the next time you report it, it's you. You called it upon yourself. Every other day, he and I would be on a midwatch together, and that was at his request. And I knew what this was going to be because he'd been harassed. So I showed up with, underneath my coveralls, I would have a sports bra, a t-shirt, another sports bra, and I had picked up in Puerto Rico these Lycra pants to make it harder for him to get to me, because we're talking about a 2-hour midwatch. And I thought if I could just distract him long enough. There was a night that he was beginning to conclude that rape that night. But God, I didn't know which was sicker, which was more disgusting. Was what he was doing to me or him throwing up on me while he did it? I mean, I couldn't imagine being more demoralized than that night. And at this point, I start to lose it emotionally. I had cut my sheets up and fashioned a noose, and I was getting ready to jump. And another service member woke up. It was the middle of the night, we were at sea. Another service member woke up and went to the bathroom. I saw the light from the bathroom door open. I just wasn't going to do it right then and right there. And at some point, I told RTM1, the investigation deep in so many ways. He lost rank that he had back by the end of the deployment. It's kind of like if you decide to slap somebody on the wrist and then you miss. It's really not a good punishment, but it's something more than nothing. To add insult to injury, my then boyfriend, that is now my husband, and we have 4 children together, had to go to sea with the man who raped his wife.
I enlisted in the United States Army when I was 17. I started my military career in January of '86, where I was in training, and one night, members of my own squad attacked me while I was in my sleep, and I was beaten and tortured. And so we had a real hard day of training. It was right around the 3rd or the 4th week of basic. Everything goes black. And next thing I remember, I'm in the room across the hall, and I'm trying to run for the window, but I'm running in the wrong direction. They're on me again, and they dragged me into the bathroom, and they're hitting me, and I could see them all around me, just yelling, "Kill him! Hit him again! Kill him!" It was snowing that night, and I remember being so tired and it being so late, and all I wanted to do was hit the rack. So I got my boots off, and I figured I'd, sleep for another night, get up in the morning, do it all again. Just got to make it through. You got to make a difference. And next thing I know, I should be sleeping, and something's wet, and it sounds like rain. And then I feel pain. Something's hitting me. Somebody's hitting me, and I'm fighting. I can't see anything. It's dark, and I'm getting rained on, and I'm fighting and getting hit more and more. And I can see by the moonlight, and I can see that my squad's around me, and they've been holding me down with a blanket, and I'm trying to fight my way out of it, And as you're doing it, you're realizing it's not a dream. And I'm getting hit. I'm getting hit everywhere. I'm getting hit in the face a lot. But I could feel a lot of pain. And it's just like it's some kind of big show for him. And then everything went black again. And I remember right before it all disappeared, I thought, I'm going to die here. They're going to beat me to death in the latrine. After my squad tortured me and raped me, and the doctor wouldn't even listen, and I had to be back in the middle of it, I became born again hard. That's what they want, right? And if I'm the craziest motherfucker, then they gotta think they better leave me alone, because I gotta sleep in the same room with them. So, you name it. Pop that grenade, hold on to it till it almost blows you in pieces before you throw it. Hang from the top of that frickin' obstacle and just look at the end. They want you to be a killer. I'm their killer. That's what I became, because I'm not safe. And either I'm gonna go ahead and get that early relief and I'm finally gonna die, or they're just gonna be too scared to touch me again. And that's the way it was. I'm sure they were really, really, really happy. They got plenty of flags. They got plenty of good write-ups.
I was 18 years old, went into military intelligence, and went to the Marine Corps ball where I was sexually assaulted. After reporting the rape, my entire career in the military went from excelling and on an extremely promising path to ultimately being discharged with a personality.
Had I not come forward with any sort of sexual harassment, there would have been absolutely no investigation, so therefore I would have stayed in service. There would have been no discharge. It wouldn't have led to that.
We spoke to over 160 sexual assault or sexual harassment survivors, many of whom received bad discharges and are still feeling the impact of those discharges even years after they left service.
I had been sexually assaulted several times. I couldn't take it no more, and I knew the ship was getting ready to leave, so I went AWOL. I was not going to go out to sea with these men and deal with this every single day. As soon as the ship left, I turned myself in immediately. The ultimate end was my lawyer asked me, do you want to be in the military? I told him yes. Well, I still want to be in. He says, well, they won't transfer you. He goes, the other option is you're going to have to get out. I said, okay, what's this mean? He says, well, you're going to get an other than honorable discharge, and I would be off the ship, and I wouldn't be near these attackers no more.
85% of characterized discharges are honorable, so having a discharge other than honorable is a big red flag.
A bad paper discharge can be the equivalent of a life sentence.
This is my discharge paperwork, which they call a DD-214, even though it says that I served honorably. Having the personality disorder discharge, it's changed and impacted my life in more ways than I can probably even count. It's impacted job opportunities, and although I'm probably one of the lucky ones in the fact that I have an honorable discharge, right next to where it says honorable, it says personality disorder.
A personality disorder is a mental health condition that typically arises in adolescence and disqualifies you from military service. For years, labeling someone with a personality disorder was the fastest way to get someone out of the military.
And the narrative for the code says personality disorder, so that would
Thousands of people were discharged without proper procedures being followed and without proper medical diagnosis. For many of these people, they were dismissed with less than 2 years of service, which makes them ineligible for benefits.
I lost my education benefits, I lost medical benefits, any type of military sexual trauma support groups, there was none of that.
So I was trying to get help for work, and I was told that they couldn't help me because of my discharge. That's when I started learning more about other non-honorable discharges. You're not eligible for anything. You don't get help for nothing. And the more and more I learned, the more and more disgusted I got, and the more and more I went downhill.
It was hard to go to employers and say, hey, I was an outstanding officer, but they look at my papers and it says misconduct and I didn't receive an honorable.
Thousands of victims were wrongfully discharged, but nothing has been done to correct their discharges. The Department of Defense response has been to refer people who believe that they were unjustly discharged to the Boards for Correction of Military Records or the Discharge Review Boards. But in fact, the likelihood of success before those boards is next to nothing.
The reason I went to the Discharge Review Board was to upgrade my discharge. When I was there, I immediately sat down and it was as if I was a criminal. They didn't review the case the way that we had presented it. They just believed that there was misconduct. And actually, many times they just asked me very condescending questions.
Well, in Emily's case, it's the only time that I've ever appeared before a discharge review board. When we got in there, I found myself being cut off and my client being screamed at. And this horrible interrogation, which is completely at odds with the Army's stated policy that at all levels, a complainant in a sexual harassment instance is never to be the person that's investigated. We got a decision a few months later that was erroneous in a number of different respects, and it was a 5-0 decision not to upgrade.
Like 99% plus of the cases before the correction boards are decided simply as a paperwork exercise, in which any individual case may get only minutes of consideration by the board.
The boards for correction almost never have hearings. The Navy board, for example, hasn't held a hearing in decades.
Honestly, it's mind-baffling. How can you not realize this guy's being sexually assaulted? Look at all these pages, documents proving it, doctors saying it, mental health providers, even the command is saying it. But yet you're going to not give him an upgrade so he can get benefits, so he can get correct help?
Every one of us that has gone through being sexually assaulted and then dishonored and being discharged illegally, we were denied the due process. That is unacceptable because there's other people that have the same discharge that are committing turn to drugs and alcohol. And frankly, I'm at the point where it's like, I don't believe that they care about us until they start fixing this problem.
According to our Sisters Keeper movement, 20-year-old soldier Vanessa Guillen told her family she had been sexually assaulted on base by a fellow soldier who the Army says killed. Plate says that her body was found 20 miles from Fort Hood, chopped up by a machete and laid underneath cement. News4Jax reporter Brittany Muller was at Treaty Oak Park on Prudential Drive as military sexual trauma survivors shared their stories aloud, outraged by what happened to her.
As I'm sharing to you all, it's healing and therapeutic.
Women veterans have decided to not be silent anymore about military sexual trauma.
I was actually raped 3 times in 7 years.
It happened while Katie Chorbak was active duty Army. Following Vanessa Guillen's death, Chorbak created our Sisters Keeper movement. Why are you out?
We're all rape victims, and we want to just protect.
Chorbak says 1 in 4 women are raped during their service, adding women were integrated into the military in the 40s. And this has been a generational problem that the Department of Defense has ignored.
I went through 3 separate sexual assaults in over 20 years.
6 years, I've worked heavily on a number of efforts that I had hoped would curb military sexual assault, and it hasn't. So I do think it's time to do something different. Now, as a senator and wearing a slightly different uniform, I am supporting sending sexual assault cases to a specialized military prosecutor outside of the chain of command.
It is time we take new action.
There's currently a bill in Congress that would remove the prosecution of sexual assault from the chain of command.
What the bill will do is, one is to improve the prosecution. The second line of effort is prevention.
It increases security on our bases and stations. It trains leaders from the top to the bottom on developing a better command climate.
There were 8,942 cases last year. That's 76 more than in 2021, a 1% jump. According to the Department of Defense annual report on sexual assault prevention and response, the Army saw a 9% decrease in reports. The Air Force saw the largest increase at 13%. The Navy recorded a 9% increase, and for the Marine Corps, the numbers went up by about 4%.
We'll continue to work very hard to make sustained progress to bolster warfighter confidence and leadership, assist sexual assault survivors with recovery, and hold offenders accountable.
Senate Arms.
You can't say that an increase in reporting means it's getting worse. It might be that people are feeling more confident coming forward and reporting it when in the past they wouldn't have.